Hello and welcome back, and today we're going to continue our look at comparing the Samsung 860 series with the new Ironwolf 110 SSD NAS discs. What we're going to do in today's video, we've already done cache testing, we've done basic hardware and NAND testing, and now we're going to compare 10 GBE connectivity to these in a RAID environment. Ultimately, what we're going to do is create two RAID zeros. One RAID 0 that's going to be made of the Samsung 860 discs, and another RAID 0 of the Seagate Ironwolf NAS SSDs. Then we're going to connect to this Synology NAS, the DS2419 Plus, via 10 GBE, and then we're going to test the read-write speeds of these respective RAID environments. Now, a few things straight off the bat. One, I'm well aware that we're comparing EVO and Ironwolf NAS SSDs. The reason for this is that over the last few years, because there's never been a NAS specialized SSD, most of you have been going for the Samsung series of discs, and it's either been the 860 EVO or the 860 Pro. Now, the EVO is by far the most cost effective, but I don't believe it's the most suitable for NAS environments, and most people should be looking at the Pro or the Seagates with their own respective advantages. So the reason I'm comparing EVOs with the NAS discs is because I do genuinely believe you should spend a little bit more on the SSDs in your NAS to get the speeds, and hopefully this test will prove my point. The second thing that's worth highlighting is, of course, the capacities. The Samsungs, the only ones I've got available right now are 240 gig Samsung EVOs, and I've got those in a RAID 1 environment, whereas the samples I've been sent from Seagate for all of my reviews at the moment are 1.8 terabytes each, which, don't get me wrong, is fantastic in terms of an SSD. That is a pricey bit of kit, but unfortunately I do not have a smaller capacity of the Seagates to hand or a larger capacity of the Samsung, so you will have to factor that into any results in this video. For the test that we're going to do, it won't create as much of an impact in terms of the overall capacity, because what we want to compare right now is the hardware itself, not the overall capacity, and none of the things that we're going to be doing will exceed these values. More than likely, we're not really going to be playing with more than about 50 gigabytes of capacity. So I just wanted to get that disclaimer out there early on. But let's get straight into this video. So the first thing I've done is add these drives, and I've created storage pools. Now we can ignore this primary storage pool here. This top storage pool is just a single hard drive that I've used for setting up the device. We're not going to be utilizing this storage pool in any other capacity than the device itself and its running. The first storage pool, the one that we've just called RAID 0 here, this is the one that's comprised of our Samsung 860 EVOs. And the second storage pool, the one that's got Seagate RAID 0, that is the one, unsurprisingly, that is our Seagate storage pool. The next thing we need to do is create volumes. I know I could have done this off camera, but I decided I'll include this just to show you guys how easy it is, and also highlight the difference between storage pool and volumes. A storage pool is a total available hard disk or SSD space. Volumes are independent containers that live on the storage pool, and you can have multiple if you choose. So for now, we're going to create a storage pool, and this one's going to live on our Samsungs. We're going to move forward. We're going to name this one the Samsung. Just going to type that off camera. Maybe not in that way. And we've got the Samsung series. Do there. We're going to let this be ext4. Let's keep this nice and neutral. We're not going to use Synology proprietary system. We are going to do a test like this on a QNAP NAS that I've got available, but for now we're just going to keep this at ext4. And while that builds our next volume, we're going to create one for the Seagate. So again, same again, existing storage pool. Going to click down. There's our Seagate Ironwolf SSD. Going to call this one Seagate. Click next, ext4. And we're going to create our next storage pool. First one's already completed because the SSD is nice and quick. And the next thing we're going to do is create a shared folder on these respective drives, because these are the things that we're going to be interacting with over 10 gigabit Ethernet. Now this device already has a 10 GBE card installed. If we go to the control panel, you might see a pinch of lag there whilst the screen recording software deals with a lot of stuff going on screen. So if we have a look on the control panel, I can show you that 10 GBE will be available. Oh, you gotta love this screen recording software. It does not want to play the game, does it? There's our respective RAIDs. There's the Samsung, there's the Seagate, and now we've got volumes on each of those drives. So we can now close the storage manager. I can show you the network connectivity. So we go to network. Right now we're connected via 1 GBE during the setup, and I will move over to a 10 GBE connection shortly. But we do have that 10 GBE card installed, and it's just waiting for a cable to be connected. Get rid of that. And then what we're going to do now is start creating our new shared folders for the rest of this test. So we'll let that carry on there, and we're going to call this one Samsung. And we're going to place this on the Samsung volume. So there we go, we're not going to have a recycle bin. We're not going to bother with an encryption key. We're not going to bother with anything else. We just want a nice shared folder that we can then access over 10 GBE to conduct our speed tests. There we go, we'll give ourselves all the permission we need. So let the screen recording software catch up there. Give ourselves all the privileges in the world on all the different accounts. And this will create our shared folder on that Samsung media. And again, I know I could have skipped forward, but so many of you do wonder how exactly to set up a network drive, particularly content creators that want to utilize 10 GBE as a means to edit directly on the NAS. And I always try to include this section, but of course you can fast forward through this if you've already done this before. So we've created that shared drive there. We've got our Samsung shared drive. Once we make our way back to File Station, Samsung has appeared. Now we're going to create a second shared folder. Obviously going to call this one Seagate. And this one's going to live on that Seagate volume there. Once again, no recycle bin. Once again, no encryption. We're just going to go straight into it and enable the shared folder on our Seagate Ironwolf SSDs for NAS. So this is really kind of the preliminary stuff, and then what I'm going to do in a second is make my way over to a 10 GBE connected machine and record off camera for the remainder of this test. Now, for those that are wondering why I'm going to record off camera rather than using the screen recording software you can see here, well, a lot of you may have noticed from my other videos, if you do record using screen recording software to do speed testing on any kind of device, your CPU and indeed GPU will spike massively during screen recording and any kind of rendering action, and this can be detrimental to the overall read and write speeds that you get in a test. So in order to get a nice pure speed test, it is recommended that you use a capture card or record off screen for 10 GBE recording. So I'm going to make my way now over to a Thunderbolt to 10 GBE enabled machine and do the speed tests on these respective volumes. Right, so we've moved over to a 10 GBE enabled platform. I'm sorry if you've got a bit of a humming there on the microphone there. I've got a few NASs sorted out, as you can see on the screen, and it's very hard to control this noise environment to the optimal level. If I move the laptop ever so slightly over, you can see behind this laptop the DS2419, just out of shot there. And what we've got is this row of two drives here is our Samsung drives, and these two here are our Seagate drives. So don't be surprised if you see one of those lights flickering throughout the course of this video. So we mapped the network drives earlier, and the next thing we're going to do is, map the network drives. We created shared folders, and now we're going to map these network drives. Now I've scanned our local area network, and as you can see, the 2419 Plus has appeared twice. The reason being, it's still on that 1 GBE network from earlier, but this is our 10 GBE network. You can tell because I've manually set the IP, which is pretty essential to doing any kind of speed test by 10 GBE or more. So in order to map a network drive, and again I include this just to help you guys out in future videos, in Synology Assistant, right click the NAS in question, click map drive. From here, put in the login information, which if you saw me keying it on screen is pretty obvious, and there's all of the network drives, the shared ones. So the first one we're going to create is the Samsung map to network drive, and we're going to give that one the letter S. Going to click next. There's our map network drive. It goes directly into there, and we'll open that map network drive at completion, and there it is. We've mapped that network drive. Next, we're going to do it again, but this time we're going to map that Seagate drive. So again, we don't have to enter this manually. I could just reuse the previous details, but I'm not going to. We're going to connect with the server. We're going to select the Seagate drives this time. There, we've already mapped the other one. Click next, and we're going to call this one the letter G. And we're going to map that network drive too. So again, if ever you do want to get a NAS and have a drive so it's visible on your Windows machine at all times, that is how to map a network drive. And there is our Seagate, and there's our Samsung. So we've mapped those network drives successfully to the device. We go there, and the next thing we want to do is conduct some speed tests. Now, there's lots of different tools you can use. I generally use BlackMagic, AJA, and Windows File Transfer. So what I'm going to do is get the ball rolling with the first test. There's AJA test. Again, we go to the test disk here. At the moment, it's my SSD inside the machine, and we're going to select the Samsung first. And what we're going to do is conduct the first speed test on our system. So we've got the test up and running now, and we're seeing speeds on the Samsung of well above 380 on the initial write, as well as the read as well. Now, my laptop is using a single SSD inside there. It's a 512 Micron, a really old-fashioned SSD if I'm perfectly honest, but we are still seeing quite good speeds there, over 10 GBE on those SSDs. I would have hoped a little bit higher, but I know there's a lot of resistance with regards to using that adapter there on the side for this. But these are the speeds we're seeing via AJA on that Samsung RAID 0 array. So how about if we try the Seagate? Let's have a quick look, and we'll run the Seagate. But again, the Seagate probably going to be exactly the same. I would say pretty identical if I'm perfectly honest. The read does seem to be a little higher on the Seagates than it was on the Samsungs, but we'll let this run continuously just for an extra minute or so, just to see how that goes. I say a minute, we'll leave it for about 15 seconds, and then we'll make our way over to BlackMagic software to see how the two run on there. Leave that there. Again, we're still seeing quite consistent read writes there, up at the 390 mark, which is quite nice. But what we'll do now is we'll cancel out of this, and we'll make our way over to BlackMagic, popular speed testing software. And from here, once again, we'll do 1 gig files, and we will select the target drive of the Samsung first. Let's get that down there. Samsung drive first, and let's get the ball rolling. So again, straight away over 400 in BlackMagic, obviously lovely straight away off the bat, all the way up to 470 so far, so we're getting some lovely numbers there. And of course, the way these two bits of software do bench test things are very different indeed. I mean, the AJA is much better for faster, smaller file, and you can really decrease the size of those test files dramatically, whereas BlackMagic Design is a lot better for you video editors out there, or people that deal with a lot of video files. And of course, in a RAID 0 environment of SSDs over 10 GBE, even with a Thunderbolt adapter such as the Sonic 10G Solo that I'm using, those read speeds are going to be fantastic for photo video editors out there, and these are the stats that I'm sure a number of you are going to be looking at. But we're seeing in excess of 420, maybe even 430 on average in write, and we are seeing some tremendously high read speeds on those Samsung 860 drives. But now let's make our way over to the Seagates and see what we get from that. Here's our Seagate drive, we'll click OK, and we'll make our way over to the speed here using the Seagates. So again, we've got the speeds leaping up straight over 400 straight away. Don't be surprised if the reads go up incrementally. That's quite normal with BlackMagic Design, because a lot of the file tests that it conducts do gradually get bigger. They do have a randomized element to their speed tests, but I would go as far as to say that the predominantly bigger ones happen more frequently, hence why there's kind of an incline as those reads go up. But I'm inclined to say that on BlackMagic so far, we are definitely seeing higher speeds on the Seagate drives. AJA, the margin between the speed tests on the Seagate and the Samsung drives was very, very narrow indeed. And in AJA, I would say that Samsung took the advantage because AJA does test much smaller files, and that's something between the Seagate and the Samsung drives that we've seen becoming a current, a very recurring trend here due to the NAND chips being utilized in the Seagate drives, which are triple layered NAND chips. These are much better for larger files rather than small, faster files, whereas the Samsung drives use multi-layered NAND chips, which we see hugely advantageous to those that have got smaller file transfers and require higher IOPS. Time and time again, when we've done the specification comparison of the Seagate drives EVO or Pro and the new, the Samsung drives EVO or Pro and the new Seagate Ironwolf drives, what we've seen is higher IOPS and faster tiny file transfers on those Samsung drives. The Seagate drives much better overall for the bigger files because of that NAND design, and of course that dynamic over provisioning as well in the long run. But you're not really going to see much of that in these speed tests here. So the final thing we're going to do is a very basic speed test indeed. We are just going to do simple file transfers. We're going to get those two network drives open. So we're going to use that one there. That's the Samsung drive that we're going to open up. And on the other one, we're going to open up the Seagate. So there you go, Seagate, Samsung drives. And then we are literally just going to dump, there's all those speed test files that we've just been conducted sat there. We are just going to dump a bunch of files in this directory. So we're going to go into my repository of all my catalog of files. We're just going to grab a big old bunch of files here. How many have we got here? Let's double check. What's the capacity we're looking at so far? We're looking at 26 gig. Let's try and bring it up closer to a round number, shall we? There we go, 34. I was hoping it to be 30. And we're just going to copy. And we're just going to see the average speed conducted. We're not going to transfer them both at the same time because that could affect our results. But Samsung first. Let's have a look how long it takes. And right now we've got the speeds there of 330. Hopefully there's a clock on screen timing this now. I would try to keep an eye on this right now. I'm looking at about 30, so let's have a look and see how long it takes to transfer these files. Again, it's going to be very vague because I haven't taken that into account prior to this video. So I'm just going to make a quick note here in the background to see how long it takes to transfer that size of files. I'm sure you're using the clock there on YouTube to look at these results, and you'll probably have a lot more accurate results than me. But let's see how long it's taking. We're seeing a consistent read speed of in excess of 360, maybe even 370. And look at that, I've just jinxed it. It's definitely found some big old files there. Maybe that's some original MP4s or even a few of the MOV files that I use for some of the off-screen recordings, such as the one you're watching. But we're at just over 60% completion now, and it's been running for coming up on a minute, and we're almost at 70% there. So I will continue to keep a note of this as I go, and we're reaching the completion there. And again, still well in excess of 300 megs, which again for a write operation is pretty good. We're not going to be testing read much here, but we're coming up at the end of the test here. I'm going to make a quick note, and hopefully at the end of this video we'll have these times, or that I've put a clock on screen there. Again, we're talking about the future, I have no idea, and bang, done. So I'll make a note there. And now we're going to quickly start the second part of the test, where we're going to do exactly the same operation, but this time on those Seagate Ironwolves. Again, the files are still there, 1, 2, 3, and paste. So I'm going to do some quick calculation here in the background, and by my reckoning we got 1 minute 28 seconds is how long the previous journey took there. Let's have a quick look. 32, around about 1 minute 28 seconds for those Samsung drives to commit that transfer. So once again, we are carrying on with the second part of our test. I'm going to keep talking inanely over this video. Now, it's worth mentioning that the files that we've gone through there, I have a lot of small files. So by my reckoning, in theory, this should take a fraction longer than it took the Samsungs. That's not any kind of negative statement I'm saying about the Seagate, but what I would say is that the files that we've gone for there are largely comprised of smaller files. So I'm pretty much certain now, a minute has gone by, that the Samsung drives the Seagate drives might take a pinch slower. We're definitely seeing the speed staying under 400 in this operation more than we saw in the previous iteration. And what we're proving, I think, time and time again in these comparisons between the Samsung and the Seagate drives is those Samsung drives and that NAND chip are just better suited overall for smaller files, whereas the Seagate series of drives for video editors and bigger files and media, they are definitely the kings. So that's finished that. I'm going to quickly tot up some numbers and make our way to the final part of this video. And there you go, that has been the speed test of the Samsung 860s versus Seagate Ironwolf 110 NAS SSDs for 10GB connectivity. What have we learned today? Well, once again, the point about the Samsung drives being better for those smaller files and higher IOPS has been proven yet again. They're still great drives for in the NAS use, and if you are using smaller file exchanges that you need as rapidly as possible, they do still seem to win overall. But the Seagate drives and their TLC NAND chips definitely do prove once again about larger file types. They are definitely designed for NAS. One of the things that I didn't really mention in my review, which in hindsight now I've done further testing, is definitely a point worth highlighting, is that one of the main reasons those Seagate drives are going to be great for NAS is because they're better for those bigger files, and you will get consistently higher speeds for bigger files, which for a number of you NAS users that are dealing with video in a number of ways are going to see a huge advantage of. This has been one of the final parts in these tests. I'm going to be doing the same test on a QNAP NAS just to eliminate the factor of it being one NAS brand over another. And otherwise, if you've enjoyed this, stay tuned for the further videos, and of course click like and subscribe to stay abreast of all the new innovations in NAS, hard drives, SSDs, Thunderbolt and more. See you on the next video, and toodle pip.